Let's examine exact values of trigonometric functions. Let's start with some things that we certainly should remember from geometry. If you take a square, put a diagonal across it, then you get a 45, 45, 90 right triangle. And since a squared plus b squared equals c squared, in this case, x squared plus x squared equals 1 squared, or 2x squared equals 1. So x equals the square root of 1 over 2, or rationalizing the denominator, square root of 2 over 2. If we superimpose that triangle on the unit circle, we see that the lengths of the side are radical 2 over 2, both of them, and the radius is 1. Now let's draw an equilateral triangle and draw an altitude. Now we get x squared plus 1/2 squared equals 1 squared, or x squared equals 3/4. So x equals radical 3 over 2. And we can superimpose this on top of the unit circle, and similarly the same triangle moved around results in this third triangle superimposed on the unit circle in the middle. Now, we learned earlier about the fact that 30 degrees is pi over 6, 45 degrees is pi over 4, 60 degrees is pi over 3, and so forth. And we also learned that if you take the point 10 and rotate it theta, you end up at cosine theta sine theta. So if you take the point 10 and rotate it pi over 6, you end up at cosine of pi over 6 sine of pi over 6. So actually, using what we just learned a second ago, if this point here is the cosine of pi over 6 and it's also the sine of pi over 6, and this point is radical 3 over 2 comma 1/2, then the cosine of pi over 6 must equal radical 3 over 2, and the sine of pi over 6 must equal 1/2. So equating these and these all the way around, we know exact values of trig functions. Let's go through this a little more slowly. These are in bright colors, we're stopping at exact values, and here this is stopping at 15 degrees and 75 degrees, which are not special angles. So let's first of all recall this circle up here, which we were looking at a moment ago. So this is why the cosine of pi over 6 must be equal to radical 3 over 2, and the sine of pi over 6 must equal 1/2. One little hint here is, way to think of this is, there are only three values that could be either plus or minus, and they are radical 1 over 2, that's the shortest, radical 2 over 2, and radical 3 over 2. Of course, this is 1/2. When you see a triangle that has a long side like this, it must be the longest of the three, radical 3 over 2. When you see one that has a short side, it must be radical 1 over 2. In the next triangle that we're going to look at here, we'll have the medium length and the medium length. So here it is, a medium length that must be radical 2 over 2, medium length radical 2 over 2, the short length 1/2, the long length radical 3 over 2. So in this way, you could, if you were asked, for instance, what is the cosine of 5 pi over 6, you simply need to identify where that point is on the circle. Cosine is the x value. So you're thinking of this triangle right here. Cosine is the x value, so that's negative long, so it must be negative radical 3 over 2. These two are equal. That'll give you an idea of exact values of trigonometric functions, but you're going to need to practice in order to get this.